USCHO.com.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Wednesday, February 15th, 2023, where each week we talk with a coach, player, administrator, or journalist about college hockey. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th, 2023 at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Secure your seats at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. Perhaps one of the toughest things to do in college hockey is to come back at the same level after you've made it to the highest point on the national stage.
Joining us now on USCHO Spotlight, the head coach of Minnesota State, it's Mike Hastings. And Hasty, it's great to see you again. Your team struggled a little bit out of the gate this year. You know, it's a new year after reaching the national championship game a year ago, but a 500 team or so at Christmas, and you are now 9-1 in your last 10. Tell us what's happened this season and what certainly led to the success of late.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's good to see both of you, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about our team. Like you said, had to turn the page, which we all do as coaches in a new season, and each team is unique to itself, and this one is different than the one we had before. And, you know, we started off with a pretty hefty non-conference schedule, which we try to do consistently. And, you know, played Minnesota and Duluth and St. Cloud and had some peaks in those 6 games and some valleys. You know, it would have been nice to win a couple more games, but we came out of that about 500, and we're hoping to build off of that in the first half up until Christmas. And it really seemed like we'd take a step forward and maybe a step back throughout that first half, whether it was special teams, whether it was some injuries, whether it was goaltending, our inability to defend as a group with losing the amount of defensemen that we lost a year ago. Then all of a sudden we couldn't score. So it was a litany of different things that stopped us from being able to be consistently successful on a weekend. The other piece is the last 3 years, we've been fortunate when we get on home ice to be successful. And we found some struggles with that. We got swept by Ferris at home. We got swept by Bemidji State at home, 2 good teams that obviously can beat anybody. And they came in and put us in our place in our own building. And that's something that we hadn't faced prior. And so the break came at a good time for us. We were about 500, as you said. I thought our leadership group did a really good job at going home and resetting. And since that point, we're 9-1 in our last 10. And now we're on another break, getting ready to go play Bemidji at Bemidji. So some peaks and valleys, different reasons. I think we've had some success, different reasons. Maybe we haven't gotten to where we wanted to get to, but that's what happens in a hockey season.
I guess the most obvious question, because if anybody's followed your program for a while, they know about a guy named Dryden McKay, who was everything to your team. One of the most difficult, if not impossible, players to replace. A great goaltender. Obviously won the Hobie Baker Award last year. What have you seen out of your 2 goaltenders? I know Keenan Racier seems to be playing a little bit more of the time, but what do you like about these 2 guys?
Well, 2 young guys that I wouldn't want to come in their shoes, right? Because they had a big pair to fill, and it's been, I don't want to say difficult. It's just been something we need to continue to message. Not only within our window of our locker room, but outside of it is, you know, Dryden McKay is not walking through the door anytime soon. He's moved on to his pro career, and there's a new opportunity for somebody. And so, you know, between Tracy and Keenan, Mills hasn't been given the opportunity quite yet. We're still a work in progress. Now, I've liked what Keenan Rancier has done over in the second half. He's came in, he's kind of took the ball, ran with it this last weekend when we played St. Thomas. I think he'd like a couple back on Saturday, but we've got two other guys sitting in the bullpen waiting for their opportunity. And as you continue to grow as a program, if you're gonna get anywhere, as we saw in the Bean Pot the other night, if you're gonna try and win hockey games at the most important time, you've got to have outstanding goaltending. And I like the direction we're going, and we just need them to continue to grow as they have from the beginning to right now.
I like it channeling your inner Rick Pitino there with Dryden McKay is not walking through this door anytime soon. You mentioned that you guys are coming off a break, and it'll be almost 2 full weeks between games when you get back on the ice this weekend. You were 9-1 coming into that break. Sometimes teams don't want to stop when they're playing that well, but how do you feel about that break and what that gave your team?
Well, hey, I don't want to speak for everybody else out there. I can just look at our window of time. I can understand yourself and even our staff looking at it and say, hey, let's just play again next weekend. But we had some travel in there. When we came off a break, we went to Northern Michigan, then came back home and turned around and went out to ASU. Temperature-wise, Earth and Pluto, right? I mean, we went from the tundra to the guys going to the rink in flip-flops. But it was travel, and so I think it came at a good time for us. We had a little bit of sickness, flu going through the group. We had some bumps and bruises through those 5 2-game sets. It gave us an opportunity to reconnect with some guys that maybe were either happy with their play, and even some guys that maybe weren't happy with their play, and give them an opportunity to get back and focus on the academic side and get that in order as we go here through our last 4 games in regular season and then playoffs. So a lot of different reasons I look at it as being a positive. We're going to have to get up to speed in a real hurry because Bemidji's been starting their games real well as of late. And so we're going to have to hurry up and get up to game speed after having a week off.
Mike, speaking of the week off, are there some things that you like to do to maybe help manage the guys' mindset, maybe give them kind of a mental break in addition to the physical break?
Great question. And absolutely. We got back Saturday late, Sunday off, skated Monday, Tuesday off. Took another day Wednesday. Thursday and Friday were pretty much Thursday was a work day, Friday was optional, and then a skate Saturday was Sunday off. I wasn't out with them a lot. I think they enjoyed that tremendously. I think they got a break. They were able to be around Todd and Paul, my 2 assistants. There were days I gave those guys off. My 2 assistants, had an opportunity to go out and go recruiting myself. A lot of mental as well as physical. And I think it's really important because as you guys understand, our season is longer than any other season in college hockey or in college sports. And so I think being able to take a break is very important, especially with what we've come off here the last few years. At letting guys kind of reset and make a push here at a really important time of the year.
More with Minnesota State's Mike Hastings in a moment. USCHO Spotlight is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida.
All right, class, it's the NCAA Men's Frozen Four. Welcome to Fandom 101. Want to help your team rule the rink? Here's your assignment. Lesson 1, go big for every goal. 2, when you bring it, bring enough for the whole class. And 3, attendance is encouraged, but passion is mandatory. The NCAA Men's Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Buy your tickets today at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. Class dismissed.
We're back with Minnesota State head coach Mike Hastings. You mentioned the trip to Arizona State. I got to visit there the week after you were there. How about that facility, and how about some prospects for Arizona State as a member of a league sometime soon?
Yeah, I've got a feeling since they unveiled that Mullet Arena that the phone calls are being returned a lot quicker now. Maybe as ASU is reaching out, to me, they'd be a great partner. The opportunity, and I'm not saying because we had some success out there, wins and losses wise, I just to be able to continue to grow West. And again, as we talked a little bit before we got on air, I'm a proponent of the old school, but boy, for us to grow West, I think it'd be fantastic because I think there's a model out there. There's a group of hockey fanatics, which you're seeing at Mullet Arena, obviously with the pro team there, but the college team, and how many people travel to go out and watch hockey at that time of the year in a facility like that. It's entertaining. The students were fantastic. I thought the energy in the building, it was a little bit of a party with a hockey game going on, which I don't think is a bad thing for our sport. And so from that standpoint, it was a good experience. And I think if people can look at that and say, boy, can we bring that into our league? Does that make us better? I think it's hard to say no, as far as that's concerned. And then the idea of somebody else looking to their neighbor and saying, hey, you know what? Because I have heard that there's a rink going up at Arizona, U of A, and hopefully it just continues to grow so our sport can continue to migrate out west.
We're a couple seasons into the new CCHA that was formed to make sure there was a league that was competitive top to bottom. And certainly the marketing and branding and identity of the league has been very strong. How about top to bottom competitiveness within your league right now?
I think you've seen that change a little bit. We've got a few different cards in the deck than we had when we first started. And to bring one right up to speed is St. Thomas. Them announcing the facility that's going to be right on their campus and the donation that they had. You're also seeing Rico do what Rico does, and that's develop hockey players that we just played them before we went into break. They're going to cause somebody some stomach acid here in the playoffs because they can beat anybody in our league. They've shown that. They've beat us. They went up to Tech and they won a game in Tech. There's no easy out. And, when you do that, hopefully we're going to continue to prepare whoever at the end of our season is standing. That team's going to be prepared getting into that NCAA tournament. And I think this year, more than any other since we've been in the CCHA, we're as good as we have been from top to bottom.
I wanted to touch on one other thing that kind of relates to being old school, I guess, and that's some of the changes this year in rules and especially video challenges. On the rules side, being able to have some leeway in assessing a major and not a 10-minute or a game misconduct, and also some of the video challenges and how they've rolled out. What's your take on how that's gone so far?
I do like anything new. You're going to have some peaks and valleys. I do like the idea of going in and not getting a guy tossed for something that they thought they saw. I do like that, but it's kind of like me at the buffet table, guys. If you continue to let me go up, I'm going to keep going up. I think we need to put a little bit of a ceiling on how many times and how reliant they become on that video. Because again, the game we had the other night, 2 goals were disallowed. I just think we've got to find a sweet spot in the middle when it comes to that. The idea of getting things right, I understand, but I know we're held accountable, and so is the team on what the scoreboard is at the end of the night. In my opinion, the referee and the linesman are getting a check that night. They've got a responsibility to go out and do their job. Want to be able to support them as much as we can. But I just don't want it to become reliant that every single time that there's a question, if it goes against me as a coach, I'm going to tell you to go take a peek at it. And if it's going my way, I can't get my guys lined up fast enough, right? And we see it in the Super Bowl. As soon as there's a question, get your guys lined up. And I hope that doesn't become more of the norm. I think we should utilize it to get the calls right, but make sure it's not something that we're completely reliant on.
Mike, you mentioned Bemidji State. They were the last team to sweep you in a weekend. That was right before the break. You'll play them this weekend on the road. Since you played Bemidji back in December, both teams seem to be heading in opposite directions. But that sometimes I think in a locker room can also build for a trap where you think, oh, they beat us, but this should be an easy weekend. They haven't played well. How much do you have to keep your team focused on the fact that this is a good team and this is a team that already maybe handed it to you once this year?
Well, I can tell you this. I know Bemidji enjoyed doing what they did to us in our building. And they deserved it that weekend. They were a better hockey team than we were both nights. And so a little bit of a learning experience for us. Second thing is, I've looked at it, and you guys understand hockey. Data doesn't lie. It doesn't always, you put that goaltender in there, just because you get more shots doesn't mean you're going to win a hockey game. They're playing better, I think, than their record. Now, I do think as a coach, sometimes that's hard to sell. And so really just show them a little bit of, when they get swept by Tech, I thought both nights, and this is not a slight to Tech because I respect what Joey's doing and how they're playing as much as anybody in the country right now. Bemidji played very well. I thought they got goaltended. Pietila was outstanding. And so for me, we're going to rely upon what the history is. And that means we could play Bemidji here. We could play Bemidji there. We could play them downtown Minneapolis. It doesn't matter what our records are. They're our rival. They're in state. We know each other very well. I've got a Beaver on my staff with Todd Connaught. He played for Tommy Saratori. We recruit against those guys consistently. So it's a rivalry weekend, and I think our guys will be excited about the opportunity to go up and play. We just know that we're going into a den that they're playing for as much or more than we are.
You, before I let you go as well, you're not usually in a position where you're thinking about where you are in the pairwise. You've usually been near the top of late. What are your thoughts just on the pairwise, where you're positioned, and do you even talk to your players about it, or just let the games take care of themselves?
You know what? I think that's a great question. We've left that alone. Just because, again, our focus in the second half has really been on us, has been on our dailies, what we get to control, play the games that are in front of us. It served us well up until last week. And so now it's a little bit of a reset. And, there's so much, as you guys know, with the years of experience that you have, what happens between now and the end of the season. There's just way too much that we do not get to control. So we're just going to try and focus on what's in front of us. And that's a hungry Beaver team. So we're going to have to go up and earn everything we're going to get.
Well, Mike Hastings, it's always great to catch up with you. Great start to 2023 for your team. Obviously, you want to keep it going. A lot of games left to play, hopefully, for your club. So thanks for the time, and good luck the rest of the way.
Always great talking to you guys. I appreciate you giving me the time, and enjoy your most exciting time of college hockey for 23. So all the best to you guys.
That's Minnesota State head coach Mike Hastings. Jim, coming back to the big stage after being in the national championship game is a tough place to be, especially when you've lost a goaltender that's sort of a once-in-a-decade level goaltender at your school. But it seems like the Mavericks have turned things around from a slow start. And it also sounds like maybe a week off right now isn't a bad thing either.
No, I think, I like what Mike Hastings said about, managing the players right now. And this is, we've talked about it on our Monday podcast, how 5 of the top 20 teams were off last weekend. And I think coaches are beginning to try to find ways to schedule that. Because this is the time of year you get the flu bug going through your team. I know I saw that with Vermont last week. They were missing 7-8 players a night. So those are the types of things that can happen. You want to get your team mentally rested for the postseason. Believe it or not, the postseason can be a really long run in college hockey. You feel like you get to a finish line with the end of the regular season, but then the intensity of postseason games, some of these leagues you play best of 3 series, maybe 2 best of 3 series that you have to get through to to get towards your championship. And then, if you're lucky enough, you qualify for a national championship, where the mental task of that, knowing that it's one and done and you make any mistakes, it could end your season, end your career for some players. It's very taxing. So I kind of liked what Mike Hastings said about just mentally trying to rest the players, not just physically. They were on a run, no doubt, going into that break. But I think the break for any team right now is not the worst thing.
We talked a little bit about the CCHA. The new CCHA has done a terrific job of assembling programs and marketing and branding itself. It really is a nice pattern for other leagues that are looking to follow in their footsteps. And they kind of followed what the NCHC did too, when it established itself a decade ago.
I think that, understanding where you are in the entire landscape helps. And I think that Don Lucia has been around for a long enough time. He understands how to position everything very well. And I think that they've done a good job of building around a geographic area, which, the old WCHA, and when I say the old one, what is now mostly the CCHA, was not really strategically built. It was built of leftovers. And I don't want to criticize any team when I say that, but these were the teams that didn't qualify for the Big Ten. They weren't Big Ten schools. These were the teams that weren't accepted into the NCHC. These were just kind of leftover teams. There was not a lot of strategy related to how you built the WCHA. And that was more out of necessity and timing than anything. So when there was a little bit more thought and strategy put behind it, I think that you've built a CCHA that is, geographically sound. You're local to most every team. And then you knew how to, in a way, market and, kind of know who you are, know what each of these schools are. There's no massive, 10,000 seat arena in the current CCHA. And that, I think, is good. It's the right size for the right schools. These are all smaller schools for the most part. And they've now all found a little bit of a home where they can be competitive. And, I love the point that Mike Hastings made of St. Thomas. Here they are coming in, right away, right out of the gate, a really tough out every time you play them. Minnesota State lost to them, Michigan Tech lost to them. These are two really good teams that will probably make the NCAA tournament, both losing to St. Thomas. So top to bottom, I think this league is pretty competitive right now. I think they're probably more comfortable coaching wise. The coaches are probably more comfortable with the geographic makeup of the league, a little bit less travel. It's probably there's, and then I do think that the league is being well publicized and well branded. I think that even though they had a blip on the radar in their tournament last year, I thought that the way that Don Lucia handled all of that, as a pretty seasoned veteran of college hockey, understanding how to put his face in front of it, actually made the league look better. Made it look like they can handle really tough situations. I'm not sure every commissioner out there could handle things perfectly. So I think that this league is in a great position to grow going forward.
Yeah, actually, Don Lucia and the league handled it a lot better than the media who covered it handled their coverage of the handling. just saying.
Probably. That's a fair statement.
We didn't jump ahead one weekend for Mike Hastings, but after heading to Bemidji in what's going to be a tough series, they're going to host Michigan Tech. The Huskies have the weekend off. This is their bye week. So next weekend at Mankato is going to come down and decide who most likely will decide who is going to be the league regular season champion. Should be terrific. And what great scheduling too.
Well, there you go. There's some strategy to how a league schedules, and you can kind of try to be a prognosticator and try to figure out who the two best teams are, and have them square off the last weekend. Very difficult to do because we see media polls and preseason polls that come out, and the team that you pick to finish second might finish eighth, and the team that you pick to finish sixth might be sitting there and battling for first. In this case, I think what the league did, putting Tech and putting Minnesota State against each other in the final weekend, it's worked out. It's going to be a fantastic final week of hockey.
USCHO Spotlight is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Get your tickets now at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. You can find our podcast at uscho.com/podcast or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been USCHO Spotlight.